right. Well, I'd like to introduce people watching this to Rita Semmel and Michael Pappas. Rita is the founder of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, and Michael is the executive director. And today, as part of our 4 Questions at a Time initiative, we're interviewing Rita and Michael to spotlight the work of the council and its significance to the community and its connection to human rights, and how everybody can understand the importance of it and hopefully even get involved. And I'd like to begin first. I've had the distinct pleasure of playing Scrabble with Rita for the last 2+ years. Though when I was asked if I wanted to do that, I said, oh yes, I've known about you, Rita, for a long time. I've known about your work and have long admired you. And I think our common colleague, who sadly is not with us, but Jim DeLange, is the one who introduced us several years back. And I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to showcase your work. So I wanted to start by asking you, Rita, can you just give us a brief history of how you began the work of the San Francisco Interfaith Council?
Well, it began, if I remember correctly, with the need for people of different faiths to come together to work on issues that concerned all of them, because we found that some of the things that were troubling the Jewish community were troubling the Catholic community or the Protestant community. And we decided, I think rightly so, Michael, that it was important for them to come together and to talk about the issues that they felt they needed to work on.
And can you just talk a little bit about Art Agnos and bringing everybody together, and then the earthquake?
Yes, we were providing winter shelter for various congregations. We were providing winter shelter, and then we had the earthquake, and remind me.
In the very, very beginning, Art Agnos called faith leaders into his office. And I know that you think that the Jews invented guilt, but the Greeks perfected it. And he said, you are religious people. You have a moral obligation to be part of the response. We have an emerging homeless crisis. And so with that, he asked if communities of faith would open up their houses of worship and not only house, but also feed and offer love to those who call the streets their home. And so what started off 34 years ago being a 1-year emergency shelter is now relied upon by the city as an important part of its response to the homeless crisis in San Francisco.
And we were tasked with the task of finding congregations which would open their doors. And we found 4 to start with the first year, and we found others in the years after that. But some of the congregations have been with us from the very beginning.
And the earthquake, when it did happen, it exacerbated the homeless crisis. And there was a humanitarian aid organization called Church World Service that had some monies that they wanted to distribute, but they didn't want to just give it to Protestants alone. Your friend Jim Emerson called folks into his office, and I think it was in part because we needed to form this 501c3 in order to receive the monies to distribute them. But also, I don't think that, as you tell it, Rita, that the congregations didn't want to just get together every time there was a crisis.
No, we wanted to do more. We wanted to do good, general good, just cause general good.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to be there for whatever came about and not have to suddenly get together to deal with whatever the issue suddenly turned up.
Well, the community is all the better for it, as we're going to learn more about. And I want to make a point for our audience and for you as well. I want to introduce Jasmine Gota, who is part of this, and Jasmine oversees the World as It Could Be, our website, social media, and communications, and is going to be really helping put our final product together of this video about your work. Thank you, Jasmine, ahead of time. So let's get into the work of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. If you could please explain, what is this work that you currently carry out, and who is involved in this work?
May I?
Yes, please.
Okay. We call our constituents the 800 communities of faith and religious institutions in San Francisco. And that's not just the congregations, but it's also what we call judicatories. And they run from the Northern California Board of Rabbis to the Archdiocese, to United Muslims, to the Episcopal Diocese of California, and everything in between. We also work very, very closely with the academic and healthcare institutions that have religious affiliation. And beginning with the Great Recession back in 2008, we started convening the CEOs of the 15 major faith-based social service agencies. Again, from Catholic Charities to Episcopal Community Services, Jewish Family Children Services, to GLIDE, Salvation Army, and the list goes on. They are in the trenches. They're the ones that are providing the essential services for the most vulnerable residents of our community. I think our mission statement kind of gives you a sense of what it is that we do in vis-a-vis these constituencies. And essentially, we bring people of different faiths together, as Rita said, to celebrate the rich, diverse religious and spiritual traditions here in San Francisco, but more importantly, to build understanding among communities of faith and to serve our community. I would say a lot of our work is done through service, because when you are doing service together, you're building relationships, and these relationships are foundational to building trust, which is foundational to interfaith dialogue. I would say we are a portal through which our civic partners have access to the religious community in San Francisco and vice versa. And so not only are we have our core missions, which are certainly homelessness, but also because of the earthquake, we got very engaged and involved with disaster preparedness, response, and recovery, because there is an expectation that the religious community is going to be there in times of disasters. And so rather than try to build the boat during the disaster, we build the relationships prior to. And so we have a plan on all different levels when the disaster comes. And a case in point would be the last 3 years. We were essentially designated by the city as its chief liaison to the 800 communities of faith and religious institutions about everything COVID. And so we became sort of the CNN, if you will, getting credible and timely information into the hands of our constituents so that they could develop policies on behalf of the people that they're entrusted with. And on top of that, the city gave us a tech platform and staff to host weekly online briefings for faith leaders, because this was not just a public health crisis. It was an economic crisis. It was an equity crisis. It was
a housing crisis.
Yeah, education, evictions, everything. So what we did is they gave us access to the best subject experts, and this was very, very helpful, and it enabled the congregations especially to pivot very quickly to online worship and virtual ministry. And I credit that to us being an anomaly here in San Francisco, where there were other communities of faith around the country who wanted to keep their doors open. we were just the opposite. We wanted to protect our people. So those are just some examples. But we are very, very involved with everything from immigration to civil and human rights. And we can talk about that a little further as you get into the other questions.
Well, to that end, I think you've already touched upon this to some degree, but what are the different ways this work touches the lives of the different people and groups of people who interact with the council?
Well, I think, as you said, we touched on it.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting. We're in the midst of our winter shelter now. And we feed between 60 and 100 homeless people every night from the Sunday before Thanksgiving to the end of March. And we have 50 congregations and 4 houses of worship that host, but 50 congregations that prepare and serve the meals. And it is wonderful that we can provide this service. I think, as Rita will attest, that a lot of times the people who are preparing the meals are the ones who are transfigured, the ones who go and serve.
Yeah, it's an emotional and a spiritual experience for them.
And Rita, because she has a seat on the Human Services Agency Commission, has been very, very involved in overseeing the work of the shelter. In the last several years, that shifted to the Homelessness and Supportive Housing Department, but HSA still has a very important role in this. The other thing more recently is, we were called upon because there are some governors out there that are sending asylees, immigrant asylees, to cities like our own. And what happens if they show up here? Well, we're not going to wait. And there's an expectation that the religious communities are going to be involved and be part of the solution. So we've been working with the Department of Emergency Management and Human Services Agency and the mayor's office to be sure that, should it happen, that our religious communities in San Francisco will be very much part of it. The other thing is, and this is Rita's baby, actually, and it all started in late 2014, early 2015. We gathered the most prominent faith leaders in San Francisco to talk about income inequality and the housing crisis here. And one of our faith leaders got up and said, we can't be part of the whining majority because we're sitting on some of the most valuable real estate and underutilized real estate in the city. And so overnight, and I've never seen anything proceed with such traction, we developed something called the Interfaith Essential Housing Task Force. And we're there to support congregations and religious institutions that would consider repurposing their properties for affordable housing, especially for those workers who are being forced out of the city who provide essential services.
I really actually had no idea of the extent of the work of the council. This is illuminating and most impressive and most helpful. Thank you, I have to say. Some
of the congregations are considering building some of this housing on some unused land that they have. And we're working on that.
We're leveraging our relationships with the planning department and other civic officials to try to cut through some of the red tape, San Francisco, and to be able to move it along so that the action reflects the rhetoric.
Excellent. Well, Rita, I know you are capable of making people take action. And as you know, the work we do at the World as It Could Be is bringing attention to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and its continuing relevance to support positive social change. So I'd like, just have you perhaps describe from your perspective, how does the work you're doing with the council intersect with the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? And
Rita is credited with not only founding the San Francisco Interfaith Council, but she was really instrumental in finding something called United Religions Initiative. And Sandy, if memory serves me correctly, that's where I first met you.
Yeah.
At the Tide Center. We had a wonderful conversation outside. I'd been visiting URI. You want to talk a little bit about URI for a minute? Because we are a cooperation circle of United Religions Initiative. Why did you guys find URI?
It was because of URI came out of the
50th anniversary?
50th anniversary of the United Nations, and we had this service at Grace Cathedral, and
Bishop Swing.
Bishop Swing and his wife went around the world to check on what was going on and what was needed. And he came back and he said, we need to get more involved in what's going on in underdeveloped countries around the world. And that's how it all started.
So it's interesting. In the little Presidio, there are 3 interfaith institutions. There's United Religions, which is very, and also has a mission at the United Nations. But it is a global network of what we call cooperation circles, peace builders, people, organizations like our own, people of different faiths, trying to do good work and make the world a better place and really emulate the principles of the International Declaration. I looked them over today, and I think our work very much reflects them. But I think because we are a cooperation circle of a United Religions Initiative, we have a unique stake in elevating those principles. And we do that in different ways. We have a unique relationship with the councils all over the Bay Area. And some of those principles are to protect people from discrimination and hate. And on a huge anniversary several years ago, before the pandemic, United Religions gave us a gift of $10,000, the Bay Area Interfaith Councils. And what we decided to do with that is to work with another institution that Rita founded called the Interfaith Center at the Presidio. And the Interfaith Center is holding that money, and we contracted with a videographer, and we are producing, as we speak here, 3 public service announcements, anti-hate public service announcements. One is on anti-Asian hate, one is on anti-Semitism, and one is on Islamophobia. And this is just the start. And when you see them and hear the testimonies given, it will bring tears to your eyes, because it's hard to think, even here in San Francisco, of some of the discrimination and violence that happens. And so by shining a spotlight on it and bringing support, it is our hope that that we can help mitigate some of that hatred. I mean, even most recently in the last 48 hours between the shootings in Monterey Park and Half Moon Bay, we've been out there working with the Brady campaign, and we've been very, very vocal advocates of the Brady campaign and their work to reduce gun violence. So these are things that are near and dear to our hearts. I happen to have served 6.5 years on the Human Rights Commission, and those were invaluable years, both to learn and to contribute. And I like to think that we are really emulating in our work in the council every one of those principles in the Declaration.
And we understand that if you're opposed to one group, you can be opposed to another group, but nobody is safe unless everybody's safe.
Well, you've explained the connection beautifully, and I don't think there could be a closer one than what you described as the founding of URI and the anniversary of the UDHR and the United Nations. And I was on the Human Rights Commission too, Michael, though I guess at a different time, 2004 to 2008. So we share that
I
common
started
experience.
2011 and went to 2017. I was one of
All right.
his very first appointments and one of his very last, because from there I transitioned to the Department of Aging and Adult Services.
Wonderful. Well, that's wonderful. Well, what I'd like you to address now is, what do you want people in the general community, both members and leaders, to know more about the work of the council, as to why it's important and how they can help further this work?
Well, I think I'll just speak for myself. What I want people to know is that everybody is equal and that prejudice is a debilitating issue, and it keeps us from being the people that we can be. And we've got to fight against prejudice whenever it pops up its evil head. And that's what all of this work is about, to show that everybody has something to contribute to make the world a better place.
I would only add to that, you know, in the 29th chapter of the book of Proverbs, in the Hebrew sacred text, there's a saying that says, "A people without vision shall perish." You know, the religious community was very, very instrumental in the recent crisis we were in. And our city is struggling right now on so many issues. We did so well responding to the pandemic, but the pandemic exposed a lot of other social inequities. And San Francisco has a history of reinventing itself. I said early on in the pandemic that we will be here involved with the response, but I think our real important work is going to be in recovery. And we were born out of crises, and we know that miracles can happen when people come together to do good things, to respond to crises. And I believe it's going to be the religious community that is going to really catalyze creativity and change as the city looks at itself and its future. And we very, very much want to be a part of that equation.
Who else would you like involved in your work in terms of the broader community, and what are the avenues for that to happen?
You raised Jim DeLange's name. When I first met Jim DeLange, I was a Greek Orthodox priest on Brotherhood Way, and he came to visit me. And I asked him that question. I said, "How do you become a member of the San Francisco Interfaith Council?" And he said to me, "You are by virtue of being."
Well,
And so I think that the real job is to let folks in those various constituencies that we spoke of realize that they are very much a part of who we are, and to tap their gifts and talents so that that we can be the more beautiful mosaic that this religious community in San Francisco is.
The door is open, and all you have to do is walk through.
well, part of what we'll do is provide I assume your contact information, like on your website, is
Right.
all that people need to see.
We have, just so you know, 5,600 e-subscribers. So every time we send a blast out, you're probably on that list. If you're not, we'll get you on that list. But that's the way we stay in touch with one another. And and those people get information about all of our activities and our briefings, our online briefings, and that's how we stay connected.
Great. Well, I'm not on the list.
You need to get on the list. Okay.
Well, this is excellent. I really am thrilled that we could do our part to showcase what you're doing. And I hope when the public service announcements come out, I guess if I get on your list, we'll know about it, right?
Yes,
Because
you will.
we'd certainly like to.
I'm sorry, You're sorry you spoke.
Yeah, you're going to get information ad nauseum.
I'm willing to take that on.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
want to thank you for being part of this. Do you have any other comments you want to make as part of this discussion? Like anything else you want people to know about that we didn't cover?
Well, when the finished product comes out, we'll be sure to put it out there.
I just want to thank you for this opportunity to reach people that we haven't been able to reach before. And to say that our door is open and we welcome everybody.